July 1979, 11:45 p.m. The air inside the private booth at the Mutiny Hotel in Coconut Grove is cold, artificially chilled to fight off the heavy, suffocating humidity of a Miami summer night. It smells of expensive cigars, spilled bourbon, and the metallic tang of fear. At the table sits a woman who has already buried 2 husbands and terrified an entire city. But tonight, the man sitting across from her isn't afraid. He is calm. He is wearing a tailored Italian suit that costs more than a standard car, and he hasn't blinked in 3 minutes. He slides a single object across the cold marble table. It isn't a weapon, it isn't a bag of cash, it is a cream-colored envelope. Thick, expensive stationery, the kind you use for a wedding invitation. He places his hand over it, leans in, and whispers one word. Midnight. The message is simple. The gentlemen of Cali, the corporate giants of the cocaine trade, have grown tired of her noise. They have grown tired of the bodies she leaves in the streets. They are offering her a grace period of exactly 24 hours to liquidate her assets, pack her bags and vanish from Miami forever. If she is still within the city limits at 12:01 a.m. tomorrow, they will not just kill her. They will erase her entire bloodline. They will burn down her houses, hunt her children, and scrub her name from history. The room goes silent. The bodyguards behind her shift their weight, their hands hovering near their waistbands, waiting for the explosion. They know her temper. They know that people have died for looking at her the wrong way. But Griselda Blanco doesn't scream. She doesn't reach for the pistol in her purse. She looks at the envelope, then checks the gold Rolex on her wrist. A slow, terrifying smile spreads across her face. She lifts a hand and signals the waiter. "A bottle of Dom Perignon," she says, her voice steady. "For the gentleman, he has a long trip back to Colombia." The messenger frowns. He doesn't understand. He expects panic. He expects negotiation. He expects a woman realizing she is cornered by a predator 10 times her size. What he doesn't realize, as he stands up to leave, is that he didn't just deliver an eviction notice. He just started a war that is going to turn the most expensive shopping district in Florida into a morgue. To understand why this moment was the fuse that blew up Miami, you have to understand the landscape of 1979. This was before the Dadeland Mall massacre became global news. This was right at the tipping point. The city was awash in cash. There was so much physical money moving through the streets that banks were running out of space to store it. But there was a philosophical problem. The drug trade was divided into 2 very different, distinct camps. On one side you had the Cali Cartel. They were the gentlemen. They operated like a Fortune 500 company. They wore suits, they invested in real estate, they bribed judges, and they hated violence because violence brought police heat. They wanted to be invisible. They wanted business, efficient and quiet. On the other side you had Griselda. She was the chaos variable. She didn't care about being invisible, she cared about being respected. She operated on a currency of fear. If you owed her money, she didn't send a lawyer, she sent a hit squad. The Cali leadership viewed her as unruly, a liability, a loud, dangerous relic that was bad for the bottom line. They decided it was time for a hostile takeover. They had the numbers, 20 men for every one of hers. They had the money, bottomless pits of cash to buy every cop in the precinct. They assumed that if they threatened her with overwhelming force, she would do the rational thing. She would run. That was their error. They were playing chess. Griselda was playing something entirely different. The moment the messenger leaves the mutiny, the clock starts ticking. 23 hours and 55 minutes left. Back at her safe house, the atmosphere is frantic. Her advisors, men who have survived street wars in Medellin, are looking at the floor. They are terrified. They know the Cali cartel doesn't make idle threats. If they say everyone dies, everyone dies. "We need to leave, Madrina," one of them whispers. "We can go to California. We can go to New York. We cannot fight them here. They have an army." They show her the math. They explain that fighting a conventional war against Cali is suicide. They have snipers. They have surveillance teams already parked down the street, watching the house. They are just waiting for the deadline. Griselda picks up the cream-colored envelope, which she has placed in the center of her desk like a trophy. She runs her finger over the expensive paper. She knows that running means survival, but running also means she is no longer the godmother. It means she is just another refugee. And for a woman driven by a pathological need for status, irrelevance is a fate worse than death. She looks at her lieutenant, Jorge Rivi Ayala. He is the tactical brain of the operation. He is the one caught between loyalty and logic. He knows they are outgunned. He knows they cannot win a shootout in the street, not man for man. "We don't fight them man for man," Griselda says, her eyes hard. "We change the game." She doesn't order them to pack. She orders them to go to a mechanic shop in Hialeah. The sun comes up over Miami. The heat begins to rise, baking the asphalt. Tourists are hitting the beaches, oblivious to the fact that a paramilitary operation is being assembled a few miles inland. The countdown hits 12 hours. Inside a nondescript warehouse in Hialeah, the air is thick with the smell of grease, welding sparks, and gasoline. Rivi is overseeing a modification that had never been seen in the United States before. They have acquired 2 Kawasaki motorcycles, fast, agile, and loud. Mechanics are stripping them down, removing the mirrors, removing the turn signals, anything that adds weight. They are tuning the engines to scream. But the real innovation isn't the bikes, it's the riders. Rivi has recruited 2 young men. They aren't old-school gangsters. They are 19 years old, hungry, and completely expendable. They are being trained in a specific maneuver. The driver focuses only on weaving through traffic. The passenger, the pillion, is strapped in, holding a Mach-10 machine pistol. The plan is insanity. The Cali leadership isn't hiding in a bunker, they are arrogant. They are planning to meet at a liquor store in a busy shopping plaza near Dadeland to toast their victory when the deadline passes. They expect Griselda to be on a plane. They expect to surrender. They believe they are untouchable in public because civilized criminals don't shoot people in broad daylight in front of shoppers and families. Griselda is betting everything on the element of surprise. She is betting that the sheer audacity of extreme violence in a public space will freeze them long enough to kill them. The sun begins to set. The sky turns a bruised purple over the city. 6 hours left. Cali surveillance teams report that Griselda's house is quiet. They see a van leaving, but it looks like a delivery truck. They relax. They call their bosses. "She's moving furniture," they say. "She's folding." They are wrong. The van isn't moving furniture. The van is the war wagon. Its walls have been reinforced with steel plates welded to the inside of the chassis. It is filled with enough ammunition to hold off a SWAT team, and trailing behind it, moving through the back alleys, keeping off the main roads, are the 2 motorcycles. The engines are idling low, purring like angry cats. In the shopping plaza, the lights of the liquor store flicker on. The gentlemen of Cali arrive. They park their luxury sedans. They get out, adjusting their ties, lighting cigars. They check their watches. 1 hour left. The messenger, the man from the hotel, is there. He's holding a bottle of champagne, laughing with his associates. He has the cream-colored envelope's twin in his pocket, a copy of the eviction notice he delivered. He feels like a king. He believes he has stared down the Black Widow and won. He has no idea that 3 blocks away, a 19-year-old kid is revving a Kawasaki engine until the needle hits the red line, waiting for the signal to drop the clutch. The deadline isn't midnight. The deadline is now, 11:55 p.m. The parking lot of the shopping plaza is bathed in the buzzing yellow glow of sodium streetlights. It's a humid Tuesday night in Miami, the kind where the air feels heavy enough to wear. Shoppers are walking to their cars, pushing carts filled with groceries, completely unaware that they are standing on a chessboard that is about to be flipped over. By the entrance of the liquor store, the gentlemen of Cali are relaxed. They are celebrating early. The messenger, the man in the Italian suit, is leaning against the hood of a silver Mercedes. He's lighting a fresh cigar, the flame dancing in the thick night air. He checks his watch. 5 minutes to midnight. In his mind, the victory is already secured. He imagines Griselda Blanco is currently in a panic, throwing clothes into a suitcase, fleeing the city she claimed to own. He believes in the power of the institution. He believes that logic always wins. But logic doesn't account for the war wagon. At 11:56 p.m., a rusted, heavy-duty van turns off the main boulevard. It doesn't pull into a parking spot. It moves with a strange, heavy lethargy, the suspension groaning under the weight of the steel plates welded inside the doors. The driver cuts the wheel hard to the left, slamming the brakes. The van skids and comes to a halt directly across the only exit lane of the plaza. Metal grinds against concrete. The exit is sealed. The messenger frowns. He lowers his cigar. He thinks it's a drunk driver. He thinks it's an inconvenience. He takes a step forward to yell at the driver, to wave him off with the arrogance of a man who owns the police. And that is when the sound hits them. It starts as a high-pitched whine in the distance, like a swarm of angry hornets. It grows louder, sharper, echoing off the storefronts. It's the sound of high-revving Japanese engines. Not the low rumble of American choppers, but the screaming mechanical tear of racing bikes. Heads turn, shoppers freeze. Two Kawasaki motorcycles mount the curb 50 yards away. They don't slow down. They accelerate. The tires screech against the pavement as they weave through the parked cars, moving with a synchronized, terrifying fluidity. The messenger drops his cigar. He sees the riders. They are small, hunched over the gas tanks, but it's the men sitting behind the drivers, the pillions, that catch his eye. They aren't holding on to the drivers' waists. They are leaning out, their bodies acting as counterweights. And in their hands they are holding MAC-10 submachine guns. There is a split second of absolute clarity, where the messenger realizes the calculation was wrong. The envelope wasn't a threat. It was a receipt for his own execution. 11:58 p.m. The first motorcycle screams past the group of Cali lieutenants. The pillion rider doesn't spray and pray. He is close enough to touch them. The MAC-10 unleashes a burst of fire that sounds like a canvas sheet ripping in half. Brrrt. It is fast. It is incredibly loud. Two of the bodyguards drop before they can even reach for their weapons. The glass window of the liquor store behind them explodes, showering the display of expensive scotch in shards of diamond-like debris. Chaos erupts. Shoppers dive behind cars. The screams are drowned out by the engine of the second motorcycle, which loops around the far side of the Mercedes, cutting off the retreat. This is not a shootout. A shootout implies two sides fighting. This is a harvest. The messenger scrambles backward, his expensive leather shoes slipping on the asphalt. He tries to get behind the engine block of the Mercedes, but the first bike has already turned. The rider throttles the engine, the bike leaning impossibly low, defying gravity, closing the distance. The pillion rider looks the messenger in the eye. There is no speech. No, this is from Griselda. Just the mechanical efficiency of the trigger being pulled. The messenger falls. The entire attack lasts less than 45 seconds. The motorcycles don't stop to check the bodies. They don't linger to taunt. The drivers kick the gears, the engines howl one last time, and they thread the needle between the parked cars, jumping the curb and vanishing into the dark Miami traffic. The heavy van at the exit suddenly revs its engine, rams the gate aside, and disappears down a side street. 12 p.m., midnight. Silence rushes back into the parking lot, broken only by the distant wail of approaching sirens and the soft hiss of radiator fluid leaking from the bullet-riddled Mercedes. Detective Diaz arrives 6 minutes later. The scene is a disaster. There are casings scattered everywhere like brass confetti, but what stops him, what makes the veteran cop go cold, is not just the violence. It's the sheer brazen nature of it. This happened in public, in a shopping center. The old rules of honor among thieves have just been incinerated. He walks over to the body of the man in the Italian suit. The messenger is lying on his back, eyes open, staring up at the humid night sky he thought he controlled. His hand is outstretched, resting in a pool of dark blood. And floating in that blood, just inches from his fingers, is the cream-colored envelope. Diaz uses his pen to flip it over. It's soaked through, heavy and red. The expensive stationery, the symbol of the Cali cartel's corporate power, is now just a piece of trash at a crime scene. Griselda didn't just reject their offer, she returned it to sender. This night changed everything. In the next 72 hours, Miami police declared a state of emergency. Retaliatory hits spiraled out of control, but they were messy, panicked. The Cali cartel, for all its money and power, realized a hard truth. They could not do business in a war zone. They were businessmen. Griselda was a warlord. They retreated to the shadows, pulling their high-level operatives out of the city, deciding that Miami had become too radioactive for civilized trade. Griselda Blanco had won. She kept her territory, she kept her crown. But in the process, she created a monster. The motorcycle assassin, the sicario on a bike, became the standard method of execution across the city. It was cheap, it was fast, and it was impossible to stop. By solving her problem with extreme chaos, she stripped the drug war of any remaining rules. 6 months later, Miami was the murder capital of the world. Griselda sat on her throne, feared by everyone, loved by no one. She had proven her point. Reputation is everything. But as she looked out over the city she had conquered, she had to know that the target on her back was now glowing in neon. In the world of the Godmother, mercy is just a slow way to commit suicide. She chose to burn the city down to prove she existed, and looking at the history books, at the graves, and at the legend that still haunts Florida, you have to ask yourself one question. If you were backed into a corner by a giant that wanted to erase you, would you accept your fate and fade away? Or would you do exactly what she did? If you want more stories about the moments that broke the world, make sure you're subscribed. There's another history waiting for you right here on the channel.